for most of last night. I'm from Legal Aid Ontario, one of the 3 co-sponsors of this event, together with the Legal Services Society of British Columbia and Osgoode Hall Law School at York University. Today we have a full day, back-to-back agenda, I would say bursting with innovation. We'll be online until about 4:30 or so this afternoon. So let me get right to our first speaker of the day. I'm pleased to welcome one of our keynote speakers. For those of you who were with us last night, we had Roger Smith. So our second keynote speaker is joining me today. I'm sure he'll be familiar to many of you, both as a colleague and a former Attorney General for the province of Ontario. Chris Bentley is presently the Executive Director at Ryerson University's Legal Innovation Zone and its Law Practice Program. Chris practiced criminal and labor law for 23 years and at every level of court. For 10 of those years, he also taught part-time at Western University's School of Law. Chris has very strong ties to legal aid. He was the founder and first chair of Neighbourhood Legal Services of London and Middlesex, a legal clinic funded by Legal Aid Ontario. In 2003, Chris was elected as a member of Provincial Parliament, London West, and he spent a decade as a minister in the Ontario government in various portfolios: labour, training colleges and universities, energy, Aboriginal affairs, and of course, where I first got to know Chris, is for 4 years as Ontario's Attorney General. We think Chris is an agent of change and someone who is determined to improve what he finds. While in government, he led initiatives like Justice on Target that reduced appearances and time to trial in criminal cases for the first time in 18 years. He initiated a health and safety initiative that reduced injuries by 20% in the province. He introduced the 4 pillars of family justice reform, civil justice reform, the largest funding increase in legal aid's history, and was part of a new approach to Aboriginal relations recognized by the United Nations. After politics, Chris joined Ryerson University and helped obtain and set up the Law Practice Program, an alternative to counselling in the province of Ontario. He recently helped establish the Legal Innovation Zone, Canada's first to help build an accessible 21st century justice system. Please join me in welcoming today's keynote speaker, Chris Bentley.
David, for that very kind and generous introduction. Delighted to be here with you and to all those watching. What a great spot. What a great conference. Kudos to all those who had something to do with putting this on. It is a magical program you developed. I think we should give the organizers a big round of applause for this. And I want to take a moment just to thank you. I want to thank all of you involved in the legal aid and in provision of legal services to the people of your jurisdictions, to many people who wouldn't otherwise have access to the important information they need. I've been a believer in the provision of services through legal aid from the time I started in law school. I've seen the magic that you do, the challenges that you've had. I've walked the path with you as a lawyer. Many of my clients were legally aided, and I did that long after I didn't necessarily have to, because there were lots of other things. But what you do is so critically important. And I say this because we're at a very important inflection point. There is an opportunity and there's a challenge. And in addressing either one, I just want us all to remember the importance of what you do, because having confidence in the importance of what you do is a stronger base from which to address change. And change is going to happen. We're in the midst of a digital technological revolution, but we're also in the midst of a consumer revolution. We don't talk about this quite as much. The consumer revolution and the digital revolution play off each other. And they're fundamentally changing our approach to how we access services of all types but including legal services, starting. They're changing our approach to law, to our respect for the law, to how we access law. I mean, just ask Blockbuster, or the music industry, or the taxi industry, all of which were heavily regulated. Lots of laws to protect copyright, use. The consumer had a different view. They didn't see value necessarily in the existing delivery system, so they used the tools that were available to access what they wanted in the way they want it, at the price they're prepared to pay, on a schedule that suits them. And it is that principle which fundamentally applies to everything. Now, you are as well placed as anybody to take advantage of this change. First of all, you have knowledge. You have knowledge gleaned of your own professional expertise, but you have knowledge gleaned of the connection with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people over the years in all different circumstance, all different community, all different income level, with all different type of problem. You have a network that is as good as any network for any business anywhere. I'm sure every one of you could expand it even more. But when you think of the physical platform that you have in every jurisdiction, Ontario is as extensive as any, I think, in the world. That's a huge presence in communities. It's a great opportunity. And it's a great opportunity to leverage. You interact with people. People who have nothing, people who direct organizations. Profits, non-profits. This is knowledge that can be leveraged. When we talk about what you're doing, talk about the digital and the consumer revolution, I think it's important to speak a little bit about the consumer and the opportunity and the challenge that lies in that for you. We have resisted technology as a profession forever and still resist it. We are far behind most other parts of society. Say almost every part of society in business in our embrace of technology. It's not you, that's my profession. For 23 years when I practiced criminal defense work, I was not on the leading edge of any technological revolution. It causes my wife and my children endless hours of mirth that I am the executive director of the Legal Innovation Zone. But as I say, you don't have to be Bill Gates. It helps if you know what he is, who he is, and what he's done. So we've not embraced technology. And yet we've seen technology, the digital revolution and the consumer revolution, change the approach to accessing information in enormously important facets of life. You have a health problem in your family? You might phone the doctor and go make an appointment. You might go to a clinic or to the hospital. But just as likely, you're getting on the net and Googling what the possibilities might be. And the information there may be accurately curated or not accurately curated, but it will be curated by somebody. If you have a consumer issue, you'll go on the net. If you have a banking issue, you can transact it on the net. We deliver legal services in fundamentally the same way that we deliver them when I left law school in 1979. At a time when to get your money out of a bank, you filled a little slip in, you lined up at the bank, usually between the hours of 9 to 5 or 10 to 4, depending on the day, and you waited for your turn at the teller. And now, using this thing, you can access your money from anywhere, you can conduct transactions from anywhere, you can negotiate loans anywhere in the world. fundamental change in how consumers interact with systems. The opportunity for us with your knowledge is to lead the technological revolution here. I'm going to speak in a minute about the how, but I want to speak about the why. Somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. There is a huge appetite in society for legal information, legal service, legal knowledge. We have as a society as great an appetite for the law, our rights and responsibilities as we ever have. And yet the legal system has not kept up with the appetite. You have a court system that moves at a glacial pace and shows no real inclination to change. And I'll address that in a minute because that has huge implications for you. We don't embrace technology in simple ways. But the legal services market is a huge market. The market that's served and the unmet legal need. It's billions of dollars across the country in report after report of people whose services are not being met by lawyers. And that's a market opportunity. And entrepreneurs are interested in markets. And entrepreneurs are starting to look at the legal market. Just the other day there was a note about how an initiative had been in 4 state bar associations in the United States and was being kicked out of 3 of them, but was being allowed to stay in California. And this was a very gentle use of technology. It was Rocket Lawyer and Google had combined to offer businesses for $4.95 access to a list of lawyers who would deliver services to those businesses. Pretty simple. A directory. Kicked out by 3 bar associations, stays in California. What got my interest was not Rocket Lawyer. What got my interest was Google. Google's looking at the provision of legal services. Google sees a market opportunity. Google didn't get to be one of the biggest companies in the world by serving the richest of the rich. They got to be there by serving the rest. They're moving. And that may be fine. There may be nothing wrong with for-profit entities delivering a service. There isn't most of the time. But it does have implications, public implications. People trust you, and they often trust governments to put together services that they can rely on. Your goal is serving them. You have no other motive than that. Other entities have additional motives. When you curate a service for the people you serve, we know what goes into it. It's consistent with the principles of law that are in your jurisdiction. It has to be. When another entity curates that service, is it going to be consistent with the laws in your jurisdiction? Is it going to incorporate those principles in family or civil, for example? Or is it going to incorporate other principles? And when people reach across jurisdictional boundaries with the use of technology, how will we know? And if people start to access their legal advice and knowledge from those who are not government or not related to government, what's government actually doing? The provision of a solid legal foundation and legal service and access to justice is at the core of what government exists for. If we're not doing that, as a government, then where's the why? There have been those in government who've expressed the view that, well, if technology is going to serve this huge number of underserved people or unrepresented people in family or in civil, why do I have to worry about it? I'll let them do it. That has profound implications. The people not now being served, it may be their only hope, but it has profound social implications. And let me just address that in starting to talk for a few minutes about the how. And it is back to our view of consumers and our view of technology. Too often, not in this room, of course, but too often the approach has been, well, some of the people I represent don't have technology, so I can't use that. Some of the people won't understand technology, so I can't use that. Some of the people won't be reached in the right way, so I can't use that. If we develop a medicine, and there are a group of people we know are allergic to that medicine, but it will help, say, 50% of the population, do we refuse to use the medicine? Of course not. The 50% would be outraged. And maybe their relatives in the other 50% would be outraged too. But we seem to take this view of technology that it's everybody served or nobody served. It's an all or nothing. And I say, don't compare things to perfection. Compare them to the alternative. And for most people, today, the alternative is not the in-person curated service by an expert with enough time to deal with all the problems. The alternative for most people is nothing. It's nothing. That's just fundamentally wrong. And that is a market that will be filled. So I want to talk a little bit about the how, because I don't know about you, but I have conversations with tech experts, and I'm usually lost in the first 30 seconds. I'm fascinated now by the conversation around artificial intelligence. Just like some intelligence someday, artificial or otherwise, I would be happy with either. But what fascinates me is the debate, and as lawyers, we love the debate about, are we going to be replaced by artificial intelligence or not? So we have a debate, and the balance of the debate seems to be, no, you're not going to be replaced. So lawyers sit back and say, oh, thank goodness. Now I can go back to doing what I was doing. So just think about this just for a second. I know nothing about artificial intelligence. We've met Andrew Arruda. You're having him here this afternoon. We've met his team. Part of his team is a tech expert from Waterloo. And a year and a half ago, we met them at our not yet open legal innovation zone. And I said to him, what brought you to the law? You're in Waterloo. What brought you to the law? He looked at me without missing a beat, and he said, low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit. And I thought, oh, okay. Strike me through the heart. We're talking now, and you've got it on your conference, but artificial intelligence. Did you have this conversation 5 years ago? Nope. Was it at any conference 5 years ago? Nope. What happened? There was an article in The Economist, I'm sure you saw it, which explained in semi-layman's terms artificial intelligence, and they said about 4 years ago, it's been around for decades, about 4 years ago there was a change. I will incorrectly explain it, so please don't repeat for publication and profit what I'm about to say, but about 4 years ago there was a change so the systems can now learn as they go much more effectively. That's why it's become ever so much more powerful. our view of the effect technology will have on us is invariably and inevitably framed by what we understand the world to be. That's what we experience today. Who knows what wizard out there is developing the next step in artificial intelligence? Who knows? I don't. I sit in a building with hundreds of entrepreneurs working on different business applications every minute of every hour of every day. We need, I think, to inform ourselves as quickly and effectively as possible about initiatives that are out there that are changing lives elsewhere. Forget about law for a minute. Elsewhere. Why are people Ubering up their taxi? Why are they involved in the download services? How are they now communicating? And I make the observation, and no offense intended, that if this room was filled with a group of 25-year-olds and under, they might design some legal processes fundamentally differently than we do. They might not be right, but they might be different. And when you think about potential clients, the 25-year-old is going to be with us potentially for a lot longer than I will. It's a different approach. So don't compare any form of technology with perfection. Compare it with the alternative. And this comes back to your network and what you do. Roger spoke so eloquently last night about so many of these things. Start with the simple use of technology. The Skypes, the WebExes, the interface that allow you to talk to each other, whether in two different clinics, whether at home base or at a clinic, whether with a library or other community resource out there. Simple use of technology is now the exception, should be the rule. And unless we ingrain ourselves with this use, we won't get used to what it could be used for. Second, the information that you have is enormously valuable. It's a marketable commodity. It's marketable to government. It's marketable to for-profit organizations. It's marketable to those who want to deliver services to the people you deliver services to. There are ways of collating it and gathering it and putting it together. Big data and analytics, all about this. Every time you use Google, they're gathering information on your use and what you're doing. That's enormously valuable. A little bit of technology can be a very powerful thing. May well help inform the governments which you serve on how they should be delivering other programs. But you need to use technology to understand that. If you look at how you might serve people by using other than traditional technology, just a word or two about the Legal Innovation Zone. We started this up. We started this up when I was putting together the law practice program. They gave me an office. I felt so powerful. They gave me an office on the 6th floor of our building. They were the former Google offices. And so they had things hanging from the ceiling. It's all open concept. I had an office with a sliding door, big barn board, exposed pipes. Quite different than the everybody gets their own office and they have private conversations environment that I'd grown up in for many decades. Ryerson has acquired a bit of a reputation, a lot of a reputation, as an innovative business incubator. In 6 short years, they're now recognized by UBI as rating agency to be number 3 in the world, after a vast consortium of institutions, and number 1 in North America. They have 400 plus entrepreneurs, 80 to 84 different companies, and they occupy tens of thousands of square feet. The culture has now spun out over the last couple of years 11 other zones, everything from medical to media. So I sat here in this office and I wander through and see all these people going back and forth, delegations from all over the world, and I said, how many of these businesses have anything to do with law? At the time, they said, none. I said, well, you need a legal innovation zone. They said, what's that? And using my best advocacy skills, when you're asked the question to which you don't know the answer, but you know there has to be an answer, I mumbled something, and the president said, go ahead, set one up. So we did. We have 22 companies in there now. We do innovation for hire. We work with organizations like Legal Aid Ontario and some private ones. And we're trying to change the system in some ways. So we did a 4-month community collaboration to see if we could come up with a way in family law, to see if we could come up with a way to help those who wanted to resolve their issues before and outside of court. My Laws BC is fantastic. We love it. You're trying to own the front end of legal systems. Here I want to come back to, I'm sure, a frustration for many of you. You're responsible for supporting people in legal systems, tied up with legal process, over which you have no control. And much less influence, I suspect, than you would like. You deal with bail issues, you deal with remand issues, you deal with family law issues, you deal with never-ending trials. But the one area you can own, and that has been the subject of countless initiatives to change it. We brought in a very successful one in Ontario, Justice on Target. First time in 18 years, reduced the time to trial and the number of appearances. We didn't invest in more money. Invest more money in more judges and more crowns and more police and more for lawyers and more courts. We did what successful businesses do in every sphere for decades. Cut out the paper, cut out the steps, give people what they need to make the decisions they'll otherwise make faster. That's business success. So whether that actually is done, and that type of approach, which is a change in culture, requires constant management. One of the characteristics of success of every initiative is, do the leaders believe in it? Because if the leaders don't have it at the top of their memo pad every day, that it's not going to go very far. When others have other priorities, initiatives will slide off. But you can own the front end of a system. And here's the magic, one of the magical areas where you can affect system change. My Laws is there to own the front end of family law. Now, every new pioneer is going to have their challenges. If there are no pioneers, then the rest of us are still stuck in the woods. So thanks to the pioneers. Great job. Just great job. And I want to learn as much as possible from what you've done, so that hopefully the mistakes that are made here are different mistakes. And you can learn from that. You can own the front end, and the front end is enormously simple. Roger spoke about some of this last night. Give people information in the way they understand it, not the way that we want to deliver it. Screen out emergency cases and connect them up. In family law, you think of domestic violence, children in distress, people with obvious medical issues. Just screen them out right away and get them to where they have to go. Agency, police, lawyer. And triage. For too long, we've treated the justice system as an all-you-can-eat buffet. You get to go and get everything you want. But when you go to a hospital, you've got a problem with your hand, you don't get to see the heart surgeon without someone saying, well, that's what you got to do. they assess your issue. Well, if you own the front end of the legal system before people engage with it, you can triage their problem for it. And it will take a little time for public adoption, but the public in other areas want this managed system. And if you own it well, you can get them to pay a little bit of money for it. Once you set it up, you can, if you wish, generate income from those with the ability to pay modest amounts. We've worked with the Government of Ontario in the Legal Innovation Zone to set up this Access to Justice Challenge. And we had 29 applications, 29 different companies. They all pitched in paper. We took a small group to pitch in person, and we chose 6 semi-finalists. And they have initiatives that go from an expedited way of getting pardons to developing a bot to deal with highway traffic tickets, to an outfit that will provide expeditious, solid business advice to business owners. And you say, is that your traditional access issue? No, it's not. Let's think about access broadly. They'll be pitching again in November. They're in the zone for 4 months. They'll pitch again in November to come up with the best possible initiative. The top 3 will share $50,000 and get another 4 months. And hopefully the government will adopt one or more of these ideas. The point, though, is that the entrepreneur is interested in the access space. And that's an opportunity for you. So you can use existing technology to connect up what you have. Always remember what you have. Serve the people who are not being served, whether the poorest of the poor or they're people with money, because it's the same approach. It's the same approach. I reject the notion. I dealt with people with all level of issue for decades. I know that we're all unique. We're all unique. And every one of my clients was unique. In fact, on different days they were unique. But there is a common core of questions that they have. A common core. And some of the people you'll see today, whether it's a Mylaws approach, Keynote logic, reducing complicated questions into a series of common core questions and answers is a huge opportunity that will enable you to own the front end of legal systems in a way you can manage and control that others can take advantage of. It's a great opportunity for you. Keynote logic, you'll hear they've worked with Legal Aid in New Mexico. They're working with private organizations. Fascinating approaches. And the technology here is increasing. These aren't costly to start. You have the expertise, they have the technology. And I guess that's the last thing I'll say before we get to some questions, which is this. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to be the experts. Bring some people in just to take a low-budget look at how you're doing your work to help you reimagine how it could be done. You don't have to do the reimagining. It's not going to put you out of business. It's actually a way of building your business to make the stronger case to the funder and the stronger case to those outside your fund to support the important work you do. Because supporting the important work you do is where I want to end up. It would be a terrible loss for 1,000 reasons if the provision of services through the use of technology was not directed and controlled and pushed by people like you. You bring a magical social commitment that will exist elsewhere but is hard to totally replicate. Bring a history and an expertise that won't be easily replicated. And we would be a weaker society not to have you in the forefront. But that is not a reason to relax, because consumers will get what they want. They want it. They're not now fully getting it. And the race is on, and I want you to win. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris, for your insights into the world of technology and the legal profession. I said we are open to questions. This will be the kind of open mic section. If you are online and wish to ask a question, you can ask it over #WireJustice. For those in the room, I think everyone knows the drill about coming up to the X on the floor and asking your questions. Just before we're getting ready with the first question, if anyone wants to make their way up, please go ahead and do so. But just one thing that you said reminds me of my own kind of anecdote when it comes to the legal profession and the use of technology. I have a cousin who sells office equipment, mostly photocopiers and scanners and things like that. But he also sells fax machines. And the only profession that he sells fax machines to is the legal profession. It says they are the only people out there still using fax machines. I think that says everything you need to know about the legal profession and technology. So I'm glad that you made that point. I also was kind of interested in how people can be left behind if they don't embrace technology. And you talked about the artificial intelligence and the lawyer who kind of goes, like, phew, the legal profession is going to survive, and I can go back to my paper files and, my books and things like that and carry on as I did before. And I think we know that that is not the case. Big example of, companies that were left behind. My father was recruited out of university and retired from Kodak. There was a company that was, huge multinational company and is now a kind of mere shadow of its former self because it failed to keep up with the technology. Kodak invented the digital camera. They didn't kind of embrace the digital camera. They kind of invented it to control it and try and keep the film business going. But there's a piece of technology that just overtook them, and as I say, it's a mere shadow of itself from its former glory days. So we are open for questions right now. Anything anyone wants to ask of Chris in the room?
I think what's interesting about Eastman Kodak, while we're waiting for any questions, example is that it was less than 10 years ago that Steve Jobs walks across the stage with this thing called the iPhone that can let you search the net, send email, take pictures, talk. Now that's less than 10 years. Now on the 7, it was the same year in which England and Wales launched their deregulation of legal services. So we now take for granted the power of these devices. But in less than 10 years, a company that had been around for 100 plus disappeared. At one point employed 140,000 people, disappeared. We ignore this at our peril. And I think the message to lawyers is that you have a unique set of skills and knowledge. But if it can't be delivered to the people who need it in the way they wish to receive it, it can be replicated, much of it, by others who will. It's an opportunity for us, really.
All right, we have our first question in the room, Chris. This is Carl Martineau, and he's the head of IT at Legal Aid Ontario.
Hi, Chris, and thank you, David. Excellent presentation. With regards to the hiring of lawyers, one of the things that I'm interested in understanding is that over the years we've seen where we have great lawyers who embrace technology, but it does seem to be there's still that constant divide in terms of trying to have lawyers become comfortable with technology. But I do notice in terms of we hire university graduates and lawyers who've come up through, they seem to be more tech savvy. What would you suggest we can do to continue to inculcate that type of that knowledge where they're coming on as lawyers, but as you said earlier, that they have more than just that, they really are as well technologists?
Yeah, it's an excellent point, and you're going to have a presentation, I think your next one, about how technology is starting to inform the approach to legal education. I think there's a huge amount that can be done. I'd separate the things into two parts. I'd separate the technologist to the creative thinker. And there's a lot of focus on the technologist about how we need to be able to use different systems, how we need to be extremely knowledgeable about them, and that's great. That's never going to be my world. It might not be the world of some who are infinitely younger than I. But being creative is a skill. Approaching things in a different way, that's a skill. Taking a look at what we've always done that works very well for the people we serve and being prepared to turn it upside down, that's a skill. And you have to learn that, start learning it as early as possible, and organizations can be part of encouraging and supporting that. In fact, requiring it. So I would marry the two. You know, there have been many initiatives in government where, I was part of a few of them, where governments made big announcements how they were going to digitize something. We're going to bring technology in. But they tend to bring technology to the same way we've been doing things, trying to stick all our paper and steps into technology, and it doesn't work for the obvious reason. You have to rethink the approach. So I would say, great point, the two different skills. If you can marry them up, that's fabulous. That the entrepreneurs at our in the building have this app. I think it's called Foodly. So if you have a reception and you don't use up all the food, they put this on Foodly, and they say, in the kitchen area there's food. And from all around the building, no matter who's there, they come in. It's like, you know, mice out of the dark. They come to get the food.
Free food. Free.
It's all free. You've never seen them. And they come and get it. It's fabulous. Just fantastic. Foodly.
Next question, Carm Runco. Carm is Director General at Legal Aid Ontario for the Hamilton-Kitchener District.
How are you doing?
Two questions, part of the same...
Will there be a Star Trek reference?
No Star Trek
Okay.
reference.
Carm asked a Star Trek reference question last night.
I know.
How do we deal with bureaucratic entities such as, and it's not saying that really disparagingly, but the Law Society that still calls itself the Law Society of Upper Canada, one part in the 21st century. Upper Canada ceased to exist many years ago. And at the same time, the court system that is really well entrenched in 1950. If you go into a courthouse, especially a family court, you take a number and you wait 3 hours to see someone stamp your documents instead of being at your office, and it can be done electronically. So how do we overcome that when there are people in place who don't want that kind of thing?
So that's a great question. And I know the Law Society is represented in the room, and they are the ultimate regulator. But I have been direct in the past, and I will be direct now. When I was the AG, we launched an initiative in family called the four pillars of family law reform. And the fourth pillar was that those in charge of the court system had to cut out the paper and cut out the steps and streamline it. We made all sorts of other investments. Well, that didn't happen. And I'm of the view it's unlikely to happen anytime soon. You see on the ground every day what is happening in the family court system in particular, with countless numbers of unrepresented, that would be visible to all. Complaints about complexity, complaints about too many forms and steps, cost, and yet there has been virtually no change in the complexity, the process, and the cost. If you took, and I will say this directly, if you took a simple business approach, bylaws incorporated it, we posited it, but it's been in business that make things, deliver services for decades. Inform, screen, triage. You do that at the front end, you would deliver a stronger, better service to at least half the people who are now going. At least half. It is so simple. It is so simple. It doesn't cut out the judges. It doesn't cut out the people in the system. It just front ends their expertise. I was told by a judge not long ago that he was very proud because their goal was to connect the people who file an application with a judge within 6 weeks. I said, 6 weeks? How about 6 minutes? And better still, how about they see somebody to triage before they file the application? It might be the wrong thing. It might be a woman in crisis. You want to wait 6 weeks? What about a child who is in desperate need of some form of counseling or medical attention? You want to wait 6 weeks? Nothing gets better in a relationship. I'm sure you've noticed this. After they file an application, it just is not getting better between the two parties for a while. So I say to you, own the front end where nobody else controls it. This is, you can own this. You can own it. You can't force them, but you can own it and make it attractive. As far as the other, I have been direct. I am not a person born of technology. And so I don't come to this with a tradesperson's love of technology. I think we are ignoring what's happening in every other part of society to our peril. And I think we are not listening to our consumers. We believe we are unique in law, that we are special. And historically, we are special, not quite as special as we think. And we think that what we deliver is unique and can only be delivered by us in a traditional way. That is clearly not the case. And historically, we could be protected as a profession within certain boundaries, but technology eliminates that. Technology means that everybody in this room can access any service they want in what I call the other London, London, England. I'm from London, Ontario. You can access it right now. You can email them, pose a question, deliver your money, get your answer. And yes, those are people with money, but it's the same principle for people without. So I'm hoping, and I think every day that we delay that, we lessen our value as a profession. We diminish our value because we're not keeping up with the thirst for knowledge by the people who are thirsty. I don't want to see that happen. I would like to see the legal revolution led by lawyers. Frankly, I'd like to see it led in Canada. Generous amount in Ontario, so we can keep the jobs and investment here. That's my political hat. But I'd like to see it led by lawyers. I'd like to see it led by the institutions here. But it is going to be led. And the race now is who's going to lead it. It's not whether it's going to be led. It's who's going to lead it. That's the only real question at the moment. Our laws and rules are not even beginning to keep up with that. Which is unfortunate.
Well, on that note, I have to end it, Chris.
That's one.
Very brief,
Okay, very brief.
with an even more brief response.
I'm Mark Benton. They see, hear me if I say that? Chris, here's my question. In BC, the government has been talking for some time about an online dispute resolution from which lawyers will be barred. Do you have comments on that?
I think the answer for lawyers is to find a way to participate in innovative dispute resolution systems that deliver to consumers what they need at the price at which they're prepared to pay, and then the issue goes away. I think as long as we're not prepared to be innovative as a profession, then that type of initiative will arise because the consumers want it.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you for your question, Mark, and thank you, Chris, very, very much for your comments. They were fantastic, and I really think it's going to help set the stage for the day. I'll be sure and follow up my thanks with a fax later next week. We're going to take a couple of minutes breaks right now to get set up for the next panel, which is on computer-mediated education and its impact on legal education. That's with John Mayer, Monica Goyle, and Trevor Farrow. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Thank you again, Chris.